for me to give you, I think what I like for you to get out of it is the most helpful tips that I can deliver to you. If you go online, and you may or may not have already done that, you will find many resources on how to network, okay, and the do's and the don'ts in terms of what to wear, what to say, business cards, all those sorts of things. So I really don't want to spend the hour or less than an hour that we've got regurgitating information to you that you can really access very easily online. So what I guess what I want to do for you, hopefully, is give you a perspective on networking that's hopefully is going to be most helpful to you as a new networker. Okay, give you a little bit of my background. I've been here with the university for this last time 9 months, but previously before that, have a background in a lot of adult education. I'm an actor and director in the theatre, and I've worked in community sector organisations, corporate and government sector. So a fairly wide range of kinds of positions. In my early days, I used to do advertising, media and marketing, worked in the media, so a fairly broad range. And I guess one of the things that I've done throughout my career is a lot of networking, whether I knew it, I was doing it or not. Okay, I guess I just kind of did. So today what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a few definitions to think about. Excuse me. I'm going to talk to you maybe about a few common concerns that people have about networking, some tips and maybe some initial steps. And we might just spend a little bit of time on the idea of the pitch, although that in itself needs to be a whole other workshop and so on of development. But most importantly, you'll notice that we've got such a huge area, and the reason that is because we're going to get up and we're going to do a little bit of networking. Okay? So before I move on, any questions? All right, so I just want to get you thinking about a couple of definitions before we start. A lot of people, when they hear the word networking, it gets scary. You know, it's like networking, it's a sell, gosh, you know, particularly if you're a bit more of an introverted or quiet personality, the idea of going out and meeting people and just going up to some random and saying hi, or, you know, can be a bit scary. And it can also be a bit, for some people, the idea of having to sell themselves or anything is a bit daunting. So what I want to try and do is bring your attention to some definitions and just maybe to change the way you think about networking. Some of you may not. Put your hand up if it scares you, or you don't like the idea of it so much. All right, put your hand up if you're excited by the prospect of networking. Okay, so a few of you. All right, so half-half. So what I want you to do is think about some definitions. So firstly, this workshop is called The Art of Networking. Okay, so the definition of art is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. Okay, it's typically in a visual format, okay, but it's producing works to be appreciated and to invoke emotional power. Okay, so the expression or application of human creativity, skill or imagination. So just think about that. Think about the word creativity even, and imagination, the art. Now, network. As a verb, to network is simply to link with or connect. It's that simple, to link with or connect. So we've got the art, we've got the network, creatively or imaginatively connecting or linking. Okay, that's simple. Use your imagination and link with. So the other thing that I wanted you to think about is another couple of words which I'll use a lot today. I will use the word objective a lot. And I get that from my actor training. So have any of you actors or done any actor training? No? One of the things that you would be taught, or all actors are taught, to know your objective. What's your objective? What's your character's objective in the whole film or the theatre or the play? What's your objective for the scene? When you go on stage for this scene, or you enter the camera, in front of the camera for this scene, what's your objective? What do you want to achieve? And they'll even say, what's your objective from that sentence? Because it's not about what you're saying, it's about what is behind that. What do you want to achieve from what you're saying? Okay? So that's another little exercise that we could do, but I do this regularly when I'm working with actors, and I just give them a random line of a play out of a hat, but I give them a different objective, and the way it comes out is very different according to whether their objective is to chastise, would be very different to, say, to invite, if that's their objective. So it's about what your objective is. So the definition of that is simply the thing that's aimed at or sought. So today I'm going to talk a lot about your objective. And the first objective I'm going to talk about you, and the one and only thing, if you go away from today, if there's only one thing you remember, I want you to remember this. The art of networking for you is simply to have a conversation. It's that simple. So as I said, you will be able to access ample resources online, and there'll be so many things to read and learn about. But if there's one thing to remember, it's just to have a conversation. It's the art of having a conversation. And if we look at the origin of the word conversation from the Middle English, it's in the sense living among. Familiarity, intimacy are the words that are used when you go back and look at the origin of the word conversation. So when we talk about intimacy, obviously I'm not talking about in a relationship in that sense, personal relationship where you'd have intimacy, but I mean when we talk about intimacy, simply a close familiarity or friendship. So if you start to think about networking in that way, one objective is to have a conversation. And if you think about the origin of the word to have a conversation, it's not just that shallow, hi, how's your day? It's to actually become familiar with someone and get to know them. Okay, any questions before I move on? No? All right. Before I go on, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about, so before I do that, so I think I said at the beginning, so why am I telling you this? Why am I saying to break it right down? The reason is that I do that is because I see it particularly with students when I go to networking events. Sometimes they find it very difficult to move outside their own student groups and start to talk to people. And it can be a very daunting thing just to walk up to someone you don't know and say, hello, because often in the back of your mind it's like, how am I going to explain to them what I do as a student and where I want to go and what I want to be? So if you take the emphasis of that away and you walk into that room and say your objective is to have a conversation, and I challenge you to have a conversation with 3 people. No more, no less. Because it's not about quantity, it's not about how many business cards you get at that event, or it's not about how many people you talk to, it's the quality of the conversation, because the art of networking is about becoming familiar with somebody. Now, if you're at an event that goes for 1.5 or 2 hours, I reckon you can only get to know 3 people really well, maximum. When I say really well enough to what do you think? Do you want to get to know them well enough to what? Sorry?
Make references.
In what way?
To get leads, to generate leads.
I think you're going too many steps. Just to call them back, just to send them an email, just to invite them to link in. Okay? It's probably a false connection if you think that by meeting one person once at one event, you're straight away going to be able to go to going to them as a reference, going to them as leads, going to them for a job. It's probably not going to be a genuine connection. What helps you to get to know someone and decide you like them? What's one thing that's, I guess, integral to that relationship for you to be able to refer to them or ring them again? What do you need to feel? Comfortable? Yep, so there's a word for that. It is, starts with T, trust. Okay? You need to be able to trust that connection that you've made. So you're probably not going to get to that point of familiarity after the first meeting. So what I would say to you is your objective is to have that conversation and become familiar with them enough to be able to link in with them at least. For example, whenever I go to a networking event, whether it's a formal one or I've met someone informally, I generally follow up with an invite to LinkedIn, probably that night when I get home, and if not, when I get home the next day, and it might be an email. Hey, it was nice to meet you last night. And we'll talk a little bit more about tips as we go along. But any questions on that before we go on? No? All good? All right, so I'll talk to you about some tips and things to think about, but before I do that, for those of you who have been at networking events, can you tell what's your experience been like? Have you been to a networking event? Yep. And how did you find it? Comfortable?
I'm happy talking to people and meeting people.
Yeah, that's your personality. So generally, how would you approach it?
If there's something that I can see that they've got in common, or someone that I know, or someone that we have in common,
Yep.
we'll start to.
So common interest, common person that you know. Anyone else who's been to networking events? One of you? Yep.
I worked as a HR, like a senior IT staffing specialist.
Yep.
So I had to meet a lot of clients and a lot of people who are looking for vacancies, like job vacancies. And
Yep.
we used to actually source for international call centers, BPOs. So
Okay, you used to source for an international call centre. So when you were networking, was that here or in your home country,
in my home country,
which is
in India.
in India? And were they set up like a rather formal network or
It's
just
like
informal?
It's like a formal network. It's like I work for a consultancy, and
Yeah.
all the HRs used to come over there.
Yeah.
Set candidates.
So in that context, was your networking, it was quite formal where you would talk about... So that's interesting because your experience, what was your name?
Abhinash.
Abhinash's experience with networking has been in that very formal environment where it's expected. Within that context, it's expected that you'll ask for leads and that you're there to develop business. Now, what we've got to remember too is across the globe, culturally, there'll be different expectations as well. So even in Australia, if you're at a formal networking event, yeah, there's an expectation that there'll be some of that. But generally the expectation is that people will want to just have a fairly informal conversation with you and just get to know you. So there's a little bit more of a laid-back culture around it, even with formal networking events. There will be discussion of business, but generally there'll be an expectation that you might discuss whatever sporting event there was or their weekend, or you might discuss the current political environment, or if it's a particular industry, you might discuss current changes in the industry. If you know each other well enough to know that you've got families or whatever, you might discuss what's going on with the family. If you've been studying, do you understand what I'm saying? So generally, culturally in Australia, even if it's a fairly formal networking function, it'll be an expectation that there's those sorts of conversations that are had. Questions? Yeah. So what I wanted to say to you is, always remember, it's an opportunity, it's not a sell. If the result is that you get some sort of outcome that's positive to you in terms of a reference, in terms of a lead, that's great. See it as an opportunity, not a sell. That should help you. And you don't need to ask for a job. In fact, on the first meeting, it probably would be a bit silly to ask for a job. You could potentially offend someone. So a lot of people have this expectation that I need to deliver a pitch and I need to ask for a job. No, not really. That's something that generally may come as a result of developing this connection through your networking. So I've said not what to be worried about. So the concerns are that it's a sell. Well, no, it's not. It's an opportunity. And the other concerns are that you need to ask for a job, and some people just aren't comfortable with that. Well, no, you don't need to ask for a job, and you probably shouldn't. So what should you be doing for? You should be looking for mutual benefit. Okay? It's about what you can do for them as much as what they can do for you. And it might even be you relaying some information that you heard about something. It might even be discussing a football game and they don't know the score but you did. You do know the score. Or it might be that someone doesn't know when a particular TV show's on, they can't remember, but you... So it's an exchange of information and there's mutual benefit that comes out of that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be work or industry related. Yep. The other thing is it's about making connections. So I've already said that. It's just about connecting with people, with linking with people. The other thing to view, to try and get out of your networking, whether it's online or face-to-face, informal, formal, see it as a... So this is once you get past that first objective, which I'm saying if there's one thing to remember today, just have a conversation. Think of it as a research opportunity, okay, for you and the other person to gain information, advice, opportunity, and it can be about any topic because it's about the objective behind it. Common interest, absolutely. That's one of the easiest ways to make that networking go that step beyond just meeting them and saying hello to that step where you get familiar with them, to develop that level of intimacy where you feel you can get in touch with them again, is by finding a common interest. Okay? Look, it happens all the time, particularly for me because I've lived and worked in Wollongong for a very long time. All it takes for me is for someone to say, I've seen you somewhere before, and bang, you start talking about, the next 20 minutes is you start talking about, well, do you try and work out where we know each other from, or is it because our kids go to the same school or whatever it is. If you're not local, okay, and you don't necessarily have that to connect with, it may be some other common interest. It may be the university that you went to or are going to. It may be the suburb that you live in. It may be the football club that you like, the cricket team that you're into, if you're into cricket. Okay, so there's a bit of an art to that, and it's about, I guess, focusing on that, having conversation, because it's those things that are going to lead you to the next opportunities. So any questions on that? Can you give us an example? Because you spoke about common interest, didn't you? And that was your point. So can you think of a specific time or an example where that's happened for you?
That's just to connect with people?
Yeah, so a particular story that you can recall?
So many.
So many, yeah.
Everywhere from meeting other parents for the kids' school through to the workplace.
Yep.
Formal sessions,
Yep.
as well as informal sessions like workshops.
Yeah.
SRC and those kind of things.
Yep. So I'll give you a story. Part of what I do with my job, apart from teaching students, is I do a lot of work with placements, sourcing placements for students and helping them find placements. So I work a lot with employers and external agencies, and on one occasion, so you could consider it a formal networking event because we invited employers onto campus and we had a bit of an information session, etc., etc. And at the end, I just ran into someone that I knew, so there's bang, common interest, familiarity straight away. I knew them from the past, so we reconnected. At that point, another gentleman joined the conversation who I didn't know, never met him before, but I knew that he was an external partner. We talked about bike riding. That whole conversation that went for about half an hour, the very first time I met this gentleman who's alumni from here and is quite significant in the business in Wollongong, we talked about riding bikes. We didn't talk about business, we didn't talk about jobs, we didn't talk about the fact that I really just wanted him to place students for me. I did not even mention that. But it came up that, they were going for a bike ride, and I said, I own a bike. So then I ended up going for a bike ride with them. That was embarrassing because there were a bunch of engineers and I couldn't keep up. It was very embarrassing. But from that point on, this person, this connection, I've become very familiar with because the conversations have been around family, sport, interests, lecturers that we both had from this university, etc., etc. So he's become a very good connection for me. He's become a very valuable part of my network. But the first time I ever met him, we did not discuss one of those aspects. We spoke about bike riding. So the point there, we somehow arrived at the fact that we had a common interest From that, we followed up with emails, got an invitation to go bike riding with them, etc., and it goes on and on and on like that. Now, he's one of my main referral points for all sorts of things, for finding other engineers, for helping me present topics, and so on and so on and so on. Lots of opportunity came from that one conversation, which was about riding bikes. Okay, so it's the common interest, probably telling you stuff that sounds very basic and straightforward, but it really helps if you can put it into practice. And as I said, take away that emphasis there where you feel you need to be talking about work or asking for a job. Any questions on that? So the other benefits to it are social and professional support. Okay, so I've spoken about that. That was just an example. Professional development and growth for yourself and for others. Yeah? So an example of this one connection that I've just mentioned, we regularly talk about professional growth for each other, and he might have some ideas that he bounces off me, etc., etc. And it's not necessarily related to the work that we do, but through that connection we've found professional development and growth. Okay? Also, in terms of the thing that you're all probably really networking for, which is what? Why are you going to network? Sorry? To get a job, yeah, to find opportunities. Networking is probably is the main source to tapping into the hidden job market. Okay, because you've probably heard from others that close to 80% of positions that are actually available aren't advertised. Okay, they're not on Seek, they're not in the paper, they come about through referral from people who work within an organisation who refer someone else to their boss and say, hey, I know this person, they'd be good. So there's a referral before the job even gets advertised. So when you're networking, I also challenge you not to only target people who you think are going to be helpful because they're a fellow engineer, or they're an accountant, or they're a HR advisor with a recruitment company, because that's not how networking works. The art of network is to connect and link with people. You don't know if the person you're connecting with or linking with and becoming familiar with, so that they like you and you like them, you don't know who their sister's brother knows. You don't know if their father owns a massive consultancy. You don't know. You just don't know. So you don't narrow your networks. You keep a broad, open mind. So I'll give you an example. This is what we use in our classes when we talk about networking. So you know me now, right? You know who Kim Hernandez is. I know the head of our unit, director, who knows our Vice-Chancellor quite well, Paul Wellings. So you're only one step away from the head of my unit, who knows the Vice-Chancellor. Do you know the Vice-Chancellor personally? No, so you're 2 steps away from the Vice-Chancellor. And the Vice-Chancellor knows the Queen. He does. So the point is, you're only 3 steps. I'm not saying that you want to meet the Queen. You may not want to meet the Queen, but for the sake of my argument, you're only 3 steps away from the Queen. I'm 2 steps away from knowing the Queen. So it's not about whether the connection is relevant because you think it's relevant. Any connection that you develop where it's an honest, genuine connection can present opportunity for both of you. Yeah? Okay. Any other questions? So they're just some key things to remember. So, what's the one objective when you're going to a networking event? When we talk about networking corridor, whether you're out at the pub, whether you're at a seminar, whether you're at a conference, whether you're at networking after 5, which I encourage you all to go to, what's your one objective before you walk in that room? What are you going to do? You are going to have a conversation. That's it. What's your objective of that conversation? To become what? Yep. Okay. Familiar. To become familiar. So I want you to think of 3 objectives. Step 1, have a conversation. Step 2, become familiar. And step 3, follow up. You're only going to be able to follow up if you've found out if they're on LinkedIn, got a business card, ask them their name. If you're really good, you can ask them their name, ask them if on LinkedIn and remember their name and go home and link in. But some way to follow up and make it mutual. So if you do get to networking after 5, for example, I believe if you register and fill something out, I believe they print you up 100 business cards or something. Is that right, Sean? 10. 10 business cards. I've said 100. There you go. That's good because I don't want you to talk to 100 people. 10's more than enough. Why did I think it was 100? I don't know. I need a coffee. Follow up. So step 1 is have a conversation. Step 2 is become familiar. How are you going to do that? Starts with C, common interest. And step 3 is follow up. And you can only follow up if you've got some way to follow up. Now, walking up to someone and just saying, "Hi, I'm Kim. Hi, how are you?"
Good, thank you.
You haven't told me your name.
No.
Right, so there you go. Are you doing that just for the point of the exercise? Excellent. So I'll try again. Do the same thing. "Hello, I'm Kim. How are you?"
Good, thank you. I'm Nick.
You're Nick. Thanks for giving that back to me because I was going to try and get it out of you without you telling me. So what are you going to do if someone does tell me their name? "Hello, I'm Kim."
It's nice to meet you.
And you? And you are?
I'm Nick.
You're Nick. So don't be afraid to ask them who they are because that sometimes can stump you. You think, "Oh God, they haven't told me their name. What am I going to do now?" You just say, "And you are." Okay? Or "Pleased to meet you." "And your name is." Don't be afraid to do that. Okay? So 1, 2, 3. Have a conversation. 2, become familiar. 3, follow up. Now we're going to have a go at it. No, we're just going to do some really simple things just to get you moving. And they are literally really, really very simple things that I'm going to get you to do. And it's just to highlight that, you know, the point of today, which is just to have conversation. Okay? And it needs to be mutual. So before we do that, any other questions? No? All good? All right, so if I can ask you all just to stand up and just to go to the back of the room, that would be good.